Hello and welcome to the Property News Show, where every week we discuss the stories that affect landlords and investors in the UK. As always, we're joined by Mark Homer, co-founder of Progressive Group and a professional property investor. He's joined by Shaz Nawaz, director of AA Accountants and a property tax specialist. The stories we're talking about this week include the proposed increase to stamp duty for foreign investors that both Labour and the Conservatives have agreed to bring into place, the surprising rise in London house prices and why that's happening, and finally, for the second month in a row, an 11% drop in buy-to-let mortgage approvals and what that means for you. Please remember to like and subscribe. Enjoy the show.
Okay, so we've got news story number one for today, which is around house prices not falling or being bolstered by the drop in the number of homes for sale just prior to the election, or because of the election. What do we think of this, Shaz?
Well, like we were saying earlier, I think it's a bit too early to be analysing the data from what's happening per the election, because that's only started a few weeks ago. So I don't think the election frenzy has got anything to do with this. But the market in London has been weakening over many quarters. So I think we're now probably starting to see more demand, and therefore prices are starting to creep up very slowly.
So, I mean, you know, what have we had? Sort of, well, ever since the Brexit vote, was it 2016 happened? Yeah. Central London, a lot of those, you know, sort of real high ticket areas have dropped maybe 25% on average.
Yes, I think it's at 23 here. Yeah.
23. I mean, you see it. Some stuff might be up to 30% cheaper, and clearly, you know, the curve is flattening, and you would expect it when house prices drop. Often it is. It's 20, 25, 30%. So they're probably just reaching the bottom, aren't they? Another interesting point about this, we mentioned this before we started. It's so important where you get your news from, isn't it?
It is, definitely, yeah.
This looks like a Daily Mail article.
It is.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we're that keen, are we? Well, I mean, I read the Daily Mail online when I'm bored, but I don't necessarily look to the Daily Mail for the truth.
It won't come as a surprise to you, Mark. I stay well away from the Daily Mail, but having been around for quite a few years now, I've established that the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Well, so you have to read enough and from a broad perspective to kind of establish where the truth may be. It's always somewhere in between.
Yeah. So, I mean, what they're saying is that, you know, house prices have edged up slightly over the last year, a modest 1.5% in these sort of London postcodes. I don't know what that's got to do with the election. But then, you know, if you look around sort of Leicester, Birmingham, Manchester, Nottingham, property prices are up 4.6% over the last 12 months. You know, but I suppose that's more expected. What we've got Midlands, and then even more so sort of Scotland, Northern Ireland, outer areas, still growing, do you think?
Yep. Yeah. Aberdeen's growing, Oxford's growing. I mean, Peterborough's growing, isn't it? We're building around about, on average, 1,000 homes per year, which is nowhere near enough, yeah.
We're building 1,000 a year, yeah. And what do we need? What do we need? I know nationally we need, say, 150,000. I wonder what we need.
In Peterborough, well, there's about 3,200 families on the council house waiting list.
Yeah.
There's 480 odd families in temporary accommodation.
Yeah.
So that's what best part of 3,700, 3,800.
Yeah.
Plus any additional demand from people moving into the city.
Yeah.
So we need to build quite a few homes. I'd say around about 2,000 per year.
About 2,000 dwellings per annum.
We're at 50%.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, hopefully.
And the local plan says that over the next 20 years, we need to build 20,000 homes.
20,000
over 20 years. So that's on average 1,000. But
that's the new local plan. Just gone into.
No, it's been signed off. It was signed off a couple of months ago.
Was it? So that's now been introduced and is operational. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, fine. So what do we think? You know, given the sort of more medium term in terms of house prices. Do we think this trend continues, or what's it contingent on?
I think it partly depends on what the government intends to do. I mean, there's been 37 tax changes since April 14.
37?
37, which have directly impacted landlords. I mean, the well-known ones, as you know, are Section 24, wear and tear relief, SDLT. There's many other changes. We're now going to see a change in principal residence relief, coming down from 18 months down to 9 months in April. Lettings relief will be a thing of the past unless you occupy the house with a tenant. So all of those changes plus much more is going to have an impact on house prices. Above and beyond that, it depends what the government does. I think irrespective of the colour of government we're going to have, there is going to be some kind of a focus, which it has already been on property investors. So depending on those changes, it will assist us in understanding what's going to happen in the marketplace. But I was reading an article in UK Finance, pre-2007, 183,000 mortgages were given to landlords in that year. In 2017, down to 73,000. So people aren't interested in buying because it's not worth it. I mean, I get a call once every week saying, I've got a portfolio of 5 to 10 properties. I'm looking to sell it. Can you work out my capital gains tax? It's not worth it anymore. Landlords just aren't interested in investing. New landlords or people who want to become landlords aren't interested because they're put off by all these changes.
So where does this end? I mean, obviously we've got, you know, we've discussed on this show a few times over the last, I don't know, months, a couple of months, that rents are rising, and it's now accepted in most of these publications. I don't know if government or, you know, certainly the journalists are starting to put the pieces together and go, well, there's reduced supply. So where does this end? Do you think there's a load more sort of tax changes waiting to come forward, and when they're through, do landlords get a break, or does this just continue?
I think it continues unless the government, unless the government gets a grip on housing. So the simple fact, Mark, is the government's failed to build more homes. So now they're trying to penalise to some extent developers and landlords who are actually buying houses and renting them out. What the government needs to do is have a clear focus on, okay, what can they do to invest in housing, so that, because they have a duty to provide social housing, and they've not done it. So the easy target is landlords. And as you know, I've got an interest in politics, especially local politics, so we see this all the time. And we've got 1,000 homes being built in Peterborough, all by private developers and investors. And my argument to the council has always been, the council should be building some homes too, because if you've got 3,200 people on the waiting list, plus an additional 450 to 480 in temporary accommodation, we need to supply them housing.
They could surely incentivise developers to do that. They'd only be too happy to build those homes. I know I would be. So, I mean, this perplexes me. If we just rewind a little bit there to your comment about the government have not provided, you know, the social housing and you know, private market housing that they needed to, which I think almost everyone would accept. So they've decided to focus on and take it out on developers, but surely that is totally counterintuitive, isn't it? Wouldn't you want to encourage the developers to make up the shortfall and the private landlords to make up the shortfall that the government haven't? Where's the logic there? I don't get that.
That's what you see government doing over many years and many decades. So rather than trying to find a positive solution sometimes to a problem, they think, how can we curb the people who are already making a difference? And you've seen that in many different industries over the last 20, 30 years. And this time, unfortunately, it's been an attack on landlords. And you're absolutely right. You can work with landlords. Most landlords, as you and I know, are good people. They want to do a good job, supply nice housing, want tenants for the long term. But unfortunately, you get a minority of people who don't do what they're supposed to do, and then the government ends up legislating because of that minority, and that's what we've kind of seen happen here to some extent.
You throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yeah. And sometimes, often, the dodgy landlords just ignore the legislation anyway. So it's the ones...
They're the ones who don't follow the law in the first place. You're absolutely right. And everybody else who...
So this is about enforcement of the existing rules. Surely that's what they should be focusing on.
Enforcing the rules, and also waking up to their own responsibility of what they should be doing in the first place.
We're on to news bulletin number 2, which is buy-to-let acquisitions drop 11% as tax and regulatory changes hit the sector. So tell me about this. I mean, it's all about lending to buy-to-let landlords. Apparently, you know, the mortgage lenders, obviously, they all report into a council. They're saying that there's been an 11% drop in buy-to-let lending. You know, with the total amount lent in September hitting 800 million, which is down 0.8% year on year. So why is this?
Well, again, I think we've already covered this briefly a few moments ago. It's with all the changes in tax rules in terms of the SDLT, Section 24, wear and tear relief, and all the other changes that are coming in. It just isn't viable for people to invest in buy-to-let anymore, unless they're pretty sophisticated, or they've got the funds, or they've got low gearing where they can afford to borrow some more money.
Or they put it in a limited company to get around the
company.
Yeah.
But those who don't have a limited company then need to find options of how they can get their property into a limited company, and that can sometimes be expensive.
They need the information, don't they? They need to be surrounded by people who know how to do it.
And also, in fairness, there are a lot of advisors out there who aren't advising their clients properly, who are either incorporating property portfolios which are prone to problems, or some are saying it's just too complicated, don't do it. Yeah,
if you've got one or two and you probably can't incorporate without paying a load of capital gains tax and stamp duty, and the accountant's likely to say it's going to be too costly anyway. So really, if you want to do it on a bigger scale, fine. But what you're saying is, if it's one or two, maybe not worth it.
And then what happens is, if that person is a high rate taxpayer, they're paying a lot more tax now, so they think it's not worth it, I might as well just sell these properties.
Yeah, of course, because it pushes them into the higher rate tax.
And all of that is obviously causing this, as you can see, it's a direct impact. And this is what the government expected, by the way. So
they must have expected
this. Should be no surprise to them, Mark.
But
this is what they wanted.
But they say, we introduced Section 24 and put the stamp duty up and all that to level the playing field to help first-time buyers, which is, yes, there are more first-time buyers buying, but they've also dramatically reduced the numbers of new buy-to-let properties or new rental properties, or the overall number of rental properties in the private rented sector. So did they expect that? And did they expect that then to force rents up? Surely they must have civil servants and an economist that tell them, because we told them that, but they ignored us, obviously.
Mark, to be honest with you, I don't think you need a civil servant or an economist to tell you if you're buying something which is costing you more money now, so the price has gone up. So in order to sell it, you're going to have to increase your prices. It's that anybody above the age of 4 years old could establish that very quickly. They knew that. And they
so then that hits the tenants.
Of course it does.
So
it's bound to, isn't it?
So if their sort of whole narrative is that they want to help the tenants and introduce all this legislation against the nasty buy-to-let landlords, but it's doing just the opposite because it's pushing their rents up, where's the what's the real motivate? They must know that.
Yeah,
no?
Of course they do. But the first issue is this: let's say you've got a business and you buy some plant, machinery and equipment. You go to your bank, let's say HSBC, and they give you a £500,000 loan. You can claim that as an expense because it's part of your trading expenditure.
Absolutely.
Okay? So the interest. So how is it any different for a buy-to-let landlord?
It's not.
It's not. So saying they're levelling the playing field is incorrect, because they're not comparing apples to apples. It's apples to bananas or apples to oranges. That's the first thing. The second thing is, they knew that landlords are going to have to increase rents.
Yes.
There's no way they never knew that. So coming back to my earlier point,
if they knew that, what was their real motivation?
To try and get more tax coming in.
Yeah. So that's what it's about. It's about increased tax revenue rather than helping tenants.
And then those funds should have been used to help tenants, to help people to get onto the property ladder, and that's not happened. The government's failed to do that. Help to buy. Yeah, I mean, as you know, I am a fan of social housing. I think we should assist people to get onto the property ladder, but that's what the government should be doing, and it should be incentivising people to work with them. Here,
to develop.
To develop. Yeah. To say, how can we work together?
Huh.
But here they've done the exact opposite.
I find it all bizarre. But I mean, both parties, they both support this stuff.
I think all the parties do, yeah.
Yeah,
So do you. So do I to some extent in terms of saying let's have more housing for people. But you'll recall 25 years ago we were told diesel cars are the best thing since sliced bread.
I remember that.
What are we told now?
I remember Tony and Gordon telling me that when I was only in my teens.
Yeah.
And I thought I remember watching TV and thinking, yeah, that must be right.
It wasn't Gordon's fault though, by the way. But
no, he was advised by all these
by some really clever
mandarins or whatever.
Yeah.
But clearly, like asbestos and many other things that we thought were safe, it wasn't. A bit like e-cigarettes. That I knew e-cigarettes would go wrong.
Yeah.
You know, I know this is diverting slightly, but if anything new like that that's fixing, you know, you don't have to smoke anymore.
An old problem that can't be fixed.
It can't be bloody fixed. Nicotine is obviously dangerous.
But why don't the government ban cigarettes?
Well, I don't know, because it
reduce
tax take.
Discovered it, yeah.
Well, yeah, okay. Maybe reduces the cost
billion.
of the
22 billion.
It maybe reduces the cost of the NHS.
Okay, but 22 billion comes in
from selling cigarettes.
Cigarettes.
So surely it's counterintuitive for them to ban it.
Some of that goes toward the NHS, but not all the 22 billion.
Yeah.
It brings money in.
Yeah.
So they allow it to go on, and every single budget you'll see the price of cigarettes, the price of alcohol goes up by a few percent.
Pennies in the pound.
Pennies in the pound, because it's an easy way to get money into the exchequer.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But I suppose, you know, to be fair to them, they banned smoking in public places. They've made it very unappealing to go and buy a packet of cigarettes. The packet's got green, horrible teeth and body parts all over it. You can't see the cigarettes on display, and you can't buy them in tens, and you can't buy them individually. So I mean, it has had an effect.
It has, yeah.
It has.
Less people smoke now. Being a smoker, I know that.
Yes.
It hasn't affected me, by the way, but
no. But you haven't gone on with the e-cigarette. I mean, they've banned e-cigarettes in two.
I tried them,
two states, I think, in America now. It's going to come over here.
It's going to happen everywhere. That's right.
It's going to go over. It's like sugar. It starts there and comes over here. We digress.
All interesting stuff, though, linked with how people think.
It is. Of course, it is. How the government behave is key to all of this and every other industry. Okay, so overseas property buyers, they're certainly not flavour of the month and haven't been for quite a while. They're facing a UK stamp duty increase. My understanding is that there's going to be, the Conservatives say they're going to add 3% onto a 3% surcharge onto purchases of UK property by foreign property buyers, and that's my understanding in addition to the 3% surcharge that exists for investment purchases.
That's right.
And second home owners already. So they'll be paying 6% more than a homeowner. Obviously, we haven't seen all the detail yet, but that's the assumption. What do you think about that?
It's just an extra way of getting more tax. Obviously, again, back to the same problem, not building enough social housing and then saying how can we now penalise certain investors to bring more money into the exchequer. I mean, it's going to bring in £120 million, which...
It's a bit of a drop in the ocean,
It's a drop in the ocean. It's a drop in the ocean. And I'm saying they're going to use that money to tackle rough sleeping. That's not going to get us very far.
I mean, you need huge amounts, don't you?
You need huge amounts, yeah.
I mean, well, what did they come out with? What are they, the waspy women?
That's right.
What was that, 50, 60 billion?
Huge.
Massive amount of money.
Yeah.
They just didn't put it, and then the next minute they sort of said, oh, well, this is what we're going to do.
And if the government loses the case, they're going to have to pay that.
They're going to have to pay it anyway.
Yeah.
So the case is ongoing. Drop in the ocean, but of course politically popular. Those horrible people from abroad buying all our houses.
Russian oligarchs coming in.
Russian oligarchs, Arabs, people from Singapore. Apparently, I heard today from a surveyor that one of the Fletton Keys buildings, the new apartments that are being purchased in Peterborough or built in Peterborough. There are 4 blocks, there's about 350 units. This is, I don't know, let's say 70, 80 flats. One whole block has been bought by a foreign investor, apparently. So maybe he's getting it in before this gets introduced.
Yeah.
But yeah, not popular because you know, these foreigners are taking stock away from first-time buyers. So I suppose it's an easy one for government, isn't it?
It is, but if you're a foreigner, what are you going to do? You'll take your money elsewhere. I think I'll spend it in Dubai or Florida or wherever else you want to. So I think this projection of 1.2 million, 120 million, I'd be keen to see what that's based on. Because if that's based on purchases from last year, well then it's going to drop, isn't it?
Of course it is.
You're not going to have the same number of people buying property, so it's going to be interesting to see how they've come up with that number.
And the 120 million is the stamp duty which you raise, but supposedly if, as you say, volumes remain, but volumes are obviously going to decrease from those. Yeah. So then the stamp duty goes down, but then there's all the other stuff as well. There's all the, you know, sort of taxes, the local taxes on the business that buying that generates. There's all the conveyancing, there's all the mortgages, there's all
accountancy fees, income tax, corporation tax, possibly if they have it in a corporate wrapper.
So is this not shooting themselves in the foot again just to get a few votes?
It looks like it. I don't even think it's about votes, really.
What's it about then?
It's desperate measures to try and get more money into the exchequer, and there's
120 million that'll turn into 20 million because the volumes will reduce.
Yeah.
I don't understand any of this.
It baffles me sometimes, but
baffles me.
Most of these MPs living in the Westminster bubble. Have you ever been there?
I have not to the Houses of Parliament. No.
I'll take you one day.
I'd love to go, Shaz. I'd love to go.
You'll enjoy that day.
I'd like to try and explain a few things to them. I suspect they may not listen. Yeah.
You can try.
No, I mean, think about stamp duty when it went up. You know, certainly on the houses over $1 million, $1.5 million, you're paying, I think, up to 12%. I know it's not 12% on the whole figure, but if it's 10 million, it's on almost the whole figure.
It's tapered, isn't it? Yeah.
It's tapered. But when you look at that situation, my understanding is that has actually reduced the amount of stamp duty that the government now takes from property purchases because it has reduced the volume of sales.
Yeah.
So what's the point? You've reduced your tax take. Yeah, you may have got a few extra votes from taxing the super rich, but how does that help the exchequer?
Well, their whole aim was to reach a point where less homes are bought by investors. So they've kind of achieved that by some of the numbers that we've talked about today.
Yeah.
But the gap still remains. Like I said to you earlier, this time last year in Peterborough, we had 325 families in temporary accommodation.
Yeah.
That's increased by 50% to 480 odd now.
Yeah.
So
it's getting
nothing's
worse.
changed. Nothing's changed.
No, it hasn't.
What's interesting though, and some of our viewers may be interested, is we had housing associations who used to build homes and rent them out.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a change in more council-owned properties. So
it's not going to be the housing associations doing it. Are they going to diminish them? And it's going to be the council doing it?
I think over time that's going to happen.
Yeah? So I saw something about I think it was Labour saying the 80% market rent, you know, housing associations being able to charge 80%, as they are at the moment, of open market rent. That's going to be reduced. So the rents will go down. So in a way, and I guess the Conservatives will do the same, that's going to diminish the housing associations.
What's going to happen is you'll see more and more councils applying for what's called a housing revenue account, which gives them the ability to borrow money and own its own stock, which is a good thing, by the way. It's very, very good.
Yeah.
Because that means they can now start addressing the temporary accommodation, homelessness issue, but also giving council housing to people who are on the waiting list.
Yeah.
That's going to be good. That's a much better measure.
You're right, but why not let the housing associations do it? What's the challenge there?
Over the last 15 years, they've failed to build enough homes.
Okay, so they're not meeting, they're not responding to the demand. It seems a bit weird to me because those guys, you know, a lot of them are awash with money. They can borrow very cheaply. Yeah. It's weird that they aren't just on a full-scale building boom.
You say that, so the Public Works Loans Board interest rate was 2.7% 2 months ago. Yeah. they've increased it by 1 percentage point now.
Have they?
To
3.7. Have they? I didn't know that.
That's gone up
I
as
had
well.
a council buy a good sized building off me and use that fund to fund their revenue account, I think. Okay, so that's quite interesting. So councils are going to build more. They're going to build more of their own stock. They're going to retain it, which is a good thing, you would have thought. I quite like right to buy though, because I know that reduces the amount of council stock, and that's got to be the main reason why the amount of council housing has reduced so significantly over the decades. And I know there's talk about ending the right to buy, but do we not think that it's so aspirational, and something that gives tenants the ability to buy their own home is something that can make them more, financially astute. It can give them that first rung on the ladder that they need. They become more sophisticated and sort of improve their sort of financial knowledge by doing. Is that not a good thing?
I think just that on its own, Mark, isn't the solution, and neither is it the problem. What we need is a system where we help people go up the ladder. Both in terms of how we teach students or children at school, how then when people are employed, tracking that journey, because I see too often government trying to push certain industries down. What we've got to do is push people up, because as you know, raising tide raises all boats.
Yes, well that's true.
So we've got to push people up and improve and increase the aspiration. So I think right to buy isn't the solution. It is about equipping, supporting people who are at a particular stage of their journey or their life where they've come to a block, and saying how can we now support them to become better. So Peterborough is a low wage economy. So what we should be thinking about is how do we attract larger corporates into Peterborough? How do we support small businesses like your business and my business to become more prosperous? How do we
employ more people?
How do we make the high street vibrant again? Okay, so we can employ more people, create a circular economy so that everybody improves. And I think those conversations aren't had as often as they need to have in government.
Well, I'd have to agree with you, Shaz. Anything else you'd like to add on any of these news stories of the day?
I think we've kind of covered some of the tax changes. I think from my own point of view, what's important is that people are aware of all the tax changes and then they consider those numbers when looking to make investments, and that they speak to their accountant or advisor well before the event. I just see people...
You're an accountant?
I am.
But how can people get in contact with you?
They can find me on Facebook or online, aaccountants.
aaccountants.com.co.uk.
And happy to have a chat. But despite that, they can just speak to any advisor or their own accountant and just plan before they do things. Because all too often, Mark, I see people doing something, and when they come and speak to me, I think, well, why didn't you do it that way? And they say, well, that conversation was never had. So plan before the event is the point I'd like to iterate.
Okay. Shaz, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
I've learnt a good sort of chunk of stuff as usual from you.
Likewise.
And look forward to having you on again shortly.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the Property News Show. We'd love to see you next time. Don't forget, like and subscribe so you don't miss a single one of these. We release them every single Friday and they're really, really important so you know what's going on in the market. As always, leave a comment below. We love reading them. We love responding to them. We love knowing your thoughts on the stories we talk about. We look forward to seeing you next week for another episode of the Property News Show.